Hi, I'm Dave Ziegler, and welcome to today's fireside chat about optimal learning environments for kids that have been traumatized. If you have been a part of any of these and seen any of these DVDs that I have shared with people, then you'll know that some of the issues around trauma in education will be familiar. Children who have been traumatized often have their brains adjust and adapt to environments. And some of these adaptations are not consistent with the ability to learn. Things like not wanting to fail, not wanting to risk, not wanting to do new things, being concerned about the safety of the environment, to be hypervigilant. All of these things are produced by trauma many times, and it makes it quite difficult to learn. That's one of the reasons why there is a direct connection often between traumatized children and learning disabilities. But let me start by saying that I'm not one of those people that thinks that schools should be all things to all children. It is a very difficult job to teach kids reading, math, social studies, and social connections with other people in the school. These are very difficult tasks, and I don't expect teachers to be able to meet all of the needs of children, including their mental health needs and other needs. However, just looking at the job of being an educator and teaching kids how to learn, you're going to have to be aware of how kids learn, and particularly traumatized kids. So how big is the problem? It is a real issue. There are estimates that upwards to 5 million children per year are traumatized in the United States alone. And that is children essentially that are going to be in every classroom in our country. And I think that we need to be aware that these kids are not coming into the classroom ready and able to learn in the same way other children are. So what I want to do today is talk about some of the practical suggestions that I have in terms of learning and learning environments for these kids. Now, in special schools, this can be helpful, and I think it can also be helpful in regular classrooms, even though it will take a little bit of work to do these things. Children's brains, as I said, adapt to the environment by primarily focusing on their own safety. They are very concerned about what's going on around them. If somebody comes into the classroom, these are the children that will stop with whatever they're doing and look to see who just came in and are they a safe person. They're concerned about some of the parts of the day that are unstructured, things like being in the hallway, things like lunchtime, things like recess, or any time that there is less structure and there's an opportunity for them to feel like there may be some kind of threat in the situation. These children are reacting all the time. There is a close connection between traumatized kids and how they become hypervigilant and how they have trouble learning and responding and being self-regulating and connecting that with attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Both of these conditions have very, very similar symptoms, and it's important to be able to differentiate a bit. If you know a child has had traumatic experiences, then the first thing I would think of is maybe that's the source of some of these things, rather than some kind of imbalance, chemical imbalance in the brain that would need medication. So what are some of the elements in an educational setting that I would suggest that we downplay or try to avoid entirely? Well, one of the things is that we have a lot of stress and anxiety in learning environments. But stress and anxiety hits these children in a very different way, and it makes them very difficult for them to respond to it and learn if an environment is stressful. Sometimes we teach children on the bell-shaped curve, and we think that kids should be somewhere in the middle. These kids are going to be outliers. They are going to be children that are going to take extra time and attention, particularly in things like testing and other environments where they will give up very quickly and we don't know their potential. In some educational environments, it's a very serious and a very heavy kind of of setting. And I think kids learn best when they're having fun. So we want to have an enjoyable setting, an active setting, a place where kids are having a good time at the same time they're learning. And they're not being discouraged by some of their failures or mistakes that they're making. We have to be very careful about unsupervised time in the school. As I mentioned earlier, these are times when children can feel additional stress and anxiety. And so what's going on in the hallways, what's going on out at recess, for traumatized kids, it's very important to have adults be very, very clear what's happening. Sometimes in educational environments, we expect kids to learn from criticism. Well, that is unavoidable. We need to point out when children make mistakes and when they need to do things differently. But if we can change the way we do that with traumatized kids in order to do one specific thing, and that is to give them the message that you believe in them and that you know that they can do it, then they might be able to take what they did wrong and do it differently without feeling like that's a reflection of who they are on the inside. Competition is endemic to education. It's in our classrooms, it's at recess, it's in our school systems. Competition is fine, but I'm going to suggest that for traumatized kids, the kind of competition that really we ought to stress is even competition. What I mean by that is, in any situation, everyone has an opportunity to win, either in a spelling bee or a race on the playground. Children that have been traumatized do not want to risk, they don't want to be vulnerable, they don't want to fail, so they won't even put in effort. And so I think it's important to have even competition. There is also at times an element of rigidity in the classroom. This is the way we do things with everybody all the time. That isn't going to work very well with traumatized kids. So here are some things that I would suggest we build into optimal learning environments. And I understand that if you have a classroom of 30 to 35 kids, it's very, very difficult to teach to all of them effectively. And doing the best you can is the best that you're probably going to be able to do. So let's talk about some things that you could do if you have an opportunity. Some of the positives. I would build in a learning environment that's expressive. Kids that have been traumatized need to express themselves. They need to physically move. Sitting in a seat and doing seat work is very difficult for these kids. What we do in our school at Jasper Mountain is that every 20 to 30 minutes we have them stand up, we have them active, we have them moving, and sometimes we put on some music and give them a chance to move a little bit and then get back to work. What that will do is it'll teach kids to express, and it'll teach kids how to calm down and self-regulate. Predictable structure is really important. I suggest that up on the whiteboard you put the schedule for the day. Children that have been traumatized do not like surprises. So if you can make it as predictable as possible, let them know you have 5 more minutes before we're going to change and make this adjustment, and let them know so that they can anticipate that. We need to have kids experience more success than failure. We all fail when we're learning something new. But make sure that kids feel the success. If they have more success than failure, you're going to have a much better chance of having them invest time and take a chance and take the risk of doing something that's new to them that they haven't done before. We need to have adult-mediated interactions with peers, with kids and their peers. What I mean by that is adults need to be there. Children, if you haven't noticed, can be very brutal to each other in terms of feedback and comments. And you have a funny nose, and you're tall or you're short, and that is something that all of us need to learn how to toughen up a bit with. But kids that have been traumatized are very, very sensitive, and they will avoid others rather than put themselves out in a vulnerable place. So if an adult is there, they can help peers with social skills. It's particularly important, as I said, with those unstructured times in the hallways, at lunch, at recess, at times like that. There is a concept that we try to use in our program which we call sort of the unschool. Sometimes kids have been traumatized, have had very bad experiences in school, they have failed, and anything that reminds them of a regular classroom they begin to react to. A young man that came to me one time He said he loved animals, but he hated school. And I suggested that we work on that by having a trip to a local wildlife safari. And I described it as a school outing. And as soon as he heard that it had something to do with school, he didn't want to go. I enticed him to go to see the animals, and then to begin for him to see that sometimes school can be very different than his experience, and he can be a part of school and a part of learning and enjoying the animals that he had. So the unschool concept is, if the classroom looks different than neatly lined up desks and the teacher up in front talking and the students all sitting there being quiet, anything that throws that adjustment off, active situations, get the kids out of their seat, have them working together in teams, all of those things are a part of what we describe as the unschool, and kids have more of a buy-in. Be there, support them, touch them, pat them on the back, let them know what they do right as much as what they do wrong. Teaching the child through their own individual learning approaches and styles. Some kids are auditory learners, some kids are visual learners, some kids need both. Some kids are proprioceptive learners. They need to touch and feel. And if we can learn how these kids are going to respond best, then we can help them out even more. I like to encourage kids to set goals for themselves. Rather than a top-down kind of situation where the teacher decides, I like to ask kids, what do you want to learn today? What are some of those areas? And then at the end of the day, have them rate themselves. How well did you do today? What we want to do is internalize that learning and be looking for a lifelong learning approach. Again, enjoyment and fun. If learning isn't fun, they're not going to want to do it, and they're not going to want to do it very often. A variety of activities. Help with transitions, let them know when transitions are coming up, have those adults mediating there, that they're right there providing structure, giving kids choices in terms of what they want to learn within a subject matter and how they want to do it. Choice is very important to a child that's very focused on control. Group and cooperative efforts also are very, very helpful for these kids, and they get much more excited about social skills and working with others and being part of a team. School needs to be a very important place for these kids to succeed, because the first place a child must succeed is in their home. And for traumatized kids, they've often felt like failures in the home. Then they come to school, and if they fail in school as well as home, then they feel like they are a loser, they are not they don't have that intrinsic value. And if we can help them through an optimum learning environment to feel like they're a success in school, that at times can overcome some of the pain that they've had with some failure at home. And in the long run, what children's job to do is to learn and to have fun. And all school settings need to have ample amounts of learning and fun. And with that, we can turn some of these kids into successes, and we can excite them about lifelong learning, which is my goal. I hope you will join me in any way that you can to help these kids feel better and about themselves, about their process of learning, about discovery, and about being a lifelong learner and feeling like they're a success in life. So good luck to you.